mean, there's only one real quarterback in this draft. It's Fernando Mendoza. I think people are going to try and pick apart his game as we move towards the draft. He's got all the physical skills in the NFL. I think he's got the ability to be a franchise-type quarterback. Yes, they need 2, maybe 3 receivers. Yes, they need offensive linemen. They need help on defense. But if you get the quarterback, that's the main piece.
Welcome to the ES DraftCast. It's Tim Wood. It is the man with the name on the podcast, Tony Pauline. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. Back in cold New York after coming from freezing Dallas, 8-day trip. I hope people enjoyed the coverage. But hanging back in there, getting ready to get back into the regular rigmarole of things.
Colder in New York right now, or was it colder in in Frisco and Mobile?
Well, it wasn't. I mean, wasn't bad. Mobile was cold for Mobile, but Mobile generally wasn't cold. Frisco was painfully cold because it was also really windy, and they don't plow the roads there. I mean,
No, they don't
basically,
know how to. Yeah.
started falling on Friday through Monday morning when I drove to the airport. I was driving on ice snow, which I have no problem with being from New York, but
Sure.
it was the wind was crazy in Dallas and Frisco, which really made it cold.
I mean, we got 1.5 inches of snow down here, Tony, and they closed the schools today because we don't know. We don't know how to handle snow down here. I'm from Maine, so it's embarrassing to see what happens, but I mean, 1.5 inches and schools are closed. It's kind of ridiculous. But I mean, similar in Frisco, right? That's not a regular occurrence.
Oh no, but this has happened in the past, so you figured they would be ready for it, and they weren't. If anybody follows me on Twitter, I posted a picture from practice on Sunday, and I said it looks like their snow removal plan is just wait for spring for it all to melt. Literally, when I was on the plane Monday morning heading to Pensacola for the Senior Bowl, when we taxied out onto the runway, the tarmac was still all snow and ice. It was only the runway that was clear, and it was kind of funny because usually when you're on a plane, when the plane lands, people applaud. Well, when this plane took off, people applauded because so many flights were canceled, and I think up until the very last second, people were concerned that the flight we
You gotta
were
get
on,
pulled off the plane.
which was packed with scouts and all kinds of NFL personnel people, that we were going to basically head back to the gate, but fortunately, it never happened.
What just in terms of you've been to many of these at this point. I mean, in
Yes.
terms of just what you saw talent wise, um, how did this round of bowls stand out to you at all?
Not at all. I mean, it's reflective of the draft, and the draft. There are really no generational type talents. It's weak at certain positions like cornerback. It's strong at other positions like edge rusher and off-ball linebacker. I mean, there were some surprises, which we'll talk about. Some of the late add-ons, some of the guys that weren't graded in the scouting community before the season began. But overall, the play on the field was nice. It wasn't spectacular. No one made a big jump into the first round. There were some groups like tight ends I thought did very well, but it's all number 2s and number 3 tight ends. No one really, I thought, improved their draft stock within the top 100 selections noticeably. Yeah, a few spots, yes, but overall, like I said, reflective of the draft.
All right, Tony, talk to me about late ads because we know how all the pro all-star games happen between the injuries and guys just deciding for whatever reason they're pulling out. How does it work with these prospect bowls when you've got injuries or you've got guys that decide to pull out late? Um, are they pulling from past bowls like the Hula Bowl, or like how are they pulling guys into the games?
Sometimes they do. I mean, I'll speak about one guy who came up through the American Bowl. He played well, and he wasn't even on the scouting radar before the season began. And then you had the story, which we'll get into, Tyren Montgomery, the John Carroll receiver. What happens is, the scouting services do a preseason grading, and then they do a sort of season towards the end of the season grading. And if there are some guys that jump on the radar screen, they are prone to be those late ads. But as you also mentioned, if a guy plays good in the Hula Bowl, or in this case, the American Bowl, they can also get called up. And there are guys who play well at the Shrine Bowl who get called up to the Senior Bowl. And the Shrine Bowl has the problem. What happens is there are a lot of times late in the process, a guy who's committed to the Shrine Bowl will say, listen, I'm going to the Senior Bowl, which means Eric Galco, who runs the Shrine Bowl, has got to find a player, which he can from one of those smaller bowl games, the Hula Bowl, which you mentioned, or the American Bowl, or they'll just go back to late season grading and find out if a guy's ready to play. It can be complex, and I'm sure it's frustrating for. I know it's frustrating for Galco, Eric Galco, who runs the Shrine Bowl, and Drew Fabianich, who runs the Senior Bowl.
A lot of folks don't even know the Hula Bowl, the American Bowl. These are they for like smaller schools or lesser graded guys? Is there a system to how these guys get these invites?
It's actually both. It's smaller school guys and guys who weren't even on the scouting radar. So it's a combination. You will get Michigan guys and Maryland guys at the Hula Bowl, at the American Bowl. Some of these guys, this will be the last football they ever play because they're not going to get drafted. Maybe they get an invite to a mini camp. So it's guys who are eager to play and eager to show what they can do to the small group of scouts that are on hand. Problem with those games is also money, sponsorship, flying these guys in. It's a combination of everything. You don't have too many dropouts from those games unless they're being moved up to the Shriner Senior, because, like I said, for many of these guys, it's a last-ditch effort to prove that to NFL scouts that they're worthy of at least a mini camp invite.
All right, Tony, let's get into it. Let's talk about the winners of the Senior and the Shrine Bowl for you from what you saw in Frisco and Mobile. You start with a tackle from Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, first, the overall theme is when you go to games like this, even the combine, you're looking for guys that exceed expectations, guys who play better than you thought or better than advertised. And there were a couple of them, like you said, the tackle from from Maryland, I'm sorry, Alan Herron. He was a guy who I spoke with him. There's an interview on Twitter with me and him. He was elevated from the American Bowl, and Herron wasn't even graded by scouts coming into the year. There was some questions late in the process if he was even getting a draftable grade. He was fantastic. Played left tackle, showed a lot of athleticism, was shutting down day two prospects like Dennis Danny Sutton of Penn State and Logan Fanu of Utah, which I mentioned in the article at Essentially Sports. I mean, so he showed the footwork and athleticism to basically protect the blind side. 6'4" and a half, 320 pounds. Teams are going to have to decide whether or not he's got the length to play left tackle, but he showed the footwork, he showed the athleticism. I mean, again, here's a guy who, before the season, he was on no one's scouting radar. Now, if he has a good workout at the combine, which he told me he's going to, it definitely is going to end up in day 3 of the draft.
That's excellent. Now, another guy that you kept talking plenty about, you interviewed as well on camera. Tyren Montgomery was kind of the talk of the town.
Unbelievable. I mean, here's a guy. It was I believe it was Saturday or Sunday at the Shrine Bowl, and a buddy of mine in a league sent me a photo of his invitation to the Senior Bowl and said, "Watch this guy. I've known him, since he was basically since in high school where he never played football. I had no idea who Tyron Montgomery was, but he blew everybody away. It was a very late ad. Not too many people knew about him. He's only played football for 2.5 years. Actually started his career flag football. Day one, he beats Colton Hood, a potential first-round pick for Tennessee. Beat him badly off the snap of the ball. And again, if you interviewed him for about 3.5 minutes, and I asked him, I said, you go up against a guy, Colton Hood. I said, do you look to see if his foot placement is one way, or maybe he's leaning to one way to exploit him? And he's like, yeah. He says, I'm looking for a little body language. Maybe I can get outside leverage on him, staying within the route. And the funny thing is with Montgomery, he had no idea what he had just done when he beat Colton Hood. He had no idea who Colton Hood was, or that Colton Hood was a first-round pick. He later said, yeah, he says, I saw it on social media. I was like, wow, that's a big deal. And, it wasn't just a one-play wonder He was good all 3 days. He was beating top competition. And again, he hasn't gotten a combine invite yet. Told me he's going to work out at the Cincinnati Pro Day. Someone who was off the radar screen, not on the scouting radar, I should say, come September. Is he going to get drafted? He's going to have to work out well, but at the very least, he's going to be a priority free agent and will battle for a roster spot in camp next summer, or this summer, I should say.
What division is John Carroll?
I believe they're Division II. He first played at Nicholls State in
Okay.
Texas, which is Division I AA. Then he moved to John Carroll. There was something with his eligibility where the NC2A, they throw rules out there as they like them. Because he started school at Nicholls State and was 4 or 5 years into school, he could only transfer to John Carroll. He wasn't able to go to a Cincinnati or Missouri or something like that. John Carroll was his last option because of when he started at Nicholls State.
Probably had some interest, and going off of what he did at the bowl, you'd think he might have had some interest, right? And it's funny with a guy like that, though. He doesn't, like you said, he doesn't even know. Like he's been playing for 2.5 years, so it's not like he's been going to all these prospect camps and been seeing all these guys and been keeping an eye on where he ranks among all these guys. He doesn't even really know the process that well, right?
Know the process, or even know the players he's up against. I mean, when Auburn players go up against Tennessee players, when Missouri players go up against Auburn players, when Maryland players like Alan Herron's going up against Dennis Danny Sutton, who he's faced in the past, they know each other. Tyron Montgomery knew none of these guys. I mean, he was the only Division II guy at the Senior Bowl. We did have a couple 1AA guys, but and when he said that, it was hysterical that he had no idea who Colton Hood was until he found out later in the day, seeing YouTube highlights, clips, and things like that about what he had done.
That's gotta both be fun and maddening for folks like yourself. Like fun because it's something different that you haven't seen, and frustrating because you haven't seen it because you spent all this time looking at tape and thinking you know what you know, and then this guy pops up.
Well, that's why we talk about the big board at Essentially Sports. That's why it evolves. I mean, because there were some guys that I'm going to have to go back and do because not only just because they were invited to the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl, but they played well at the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl, and they showed enough skill that warrants going back and watching them and doing a scouting report on them. So it can be, but listen, it's part of the process, and good for those players. I mean,
Sure.
congratulations. I mean, no one knew who they were before the season. Scouts didn't care about them, and they kind of said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to show you what I can do."
How about Aaron Hall from Duke?
Yeah. He was terrific. I mean, you talk about Duke. There's a guy I got to go back and do. You talk about Anthony Vincent, the defensive end who was at the Senior Bowl. You talk about Wes Walker, who was at the Shrine Bowl, blew it up. Aaron Hall, a smaller one-gap defensive tackle at the Shrine Bowl, was almost unblockable. I mean, he was explosive off the snap. He plays with great leverage. If you're looking for a one-gap, three-technique type of tackle, Aaron Hall is the guy you're gonna focus on, and he did enough at the Shrine Bowl. A guy who was not even on the scouting radar prior to the season, he's done enough at the Shrine Bowl to get late round consideration.
How about another tackle from Arizona State?
Yeah, don't try and say his name because you can't. Max Iana Anchor was phenomenal.
That was an
Absolutely.
excellent effort.
He was a guy that I was really looking forward to because I'm very high on him. I've mentioned that on Essentially Sports. I've had him as a second. He was in my round 2 of my 2-round mock draft. He is a big, powerful guy. Hasn't played that much football, and he was good day after day after day. He was one of the few guys that we'll talk about next that was able to stop Derek Moore of Michigan to the point where Moore got frustrated and they started throwing punches at each other. But he's athletic. He's powerful. He was not only good in practice. If you watch the game Saturday, he was terrific during the game, and they mentioned that several times during the broadcast.
Well, how about Moore himself?
Yeah,
You
I
mentioned
mean,
him.
we talked about Tyron Montgomery and the way he beat Colton Hood in the first day of practice. First day of practice, Derek Moore put Markel Bell, the big offensive tackle from Miami, who had a 105-pound advantage on his rear end. I mean, put him down. It was unbelievable, and that got one of the things of these games that are is interesting to watch is when you get a rise from the crowd, or what I watch for is when the coaches are applauding and commending the players, or even yelling at the players because they did something wrong. And wow, the coaches were all over Derek Hood, not only on that play, but really throughout the week. I mean, he's a smaller guy at 254 pounds, but he shows a lot of power in his game. He's not just an upfield bull rushing guy. He shows an inside move. He shows the ability to rush the edge. He uses his hands well. He was good on tape. He was even better at the Senior Bowl. Again, I hope people got to see my interview with him because we talked about that. He said, "Yeah, I'm a smaller guy, but I want to come out here and show that I got power." I also asked him what he thought about what took place at Michigan at the end there with Sharon Moore, and he was honest with me. He said I was sick to my stomach over it.
And you know, next week, tiny bit slower. We don't have any bowl recap to do, so we'll put some of those interviews you did up here and talk about them on the podcast next week. Some really good stuff, but definitely check out Tony's Twitter, at Tony Pauline, and check it out on Essentially Sports on the Essentially Sports YouTube as well. Some really good interviews from the Senior and Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl especially. All right, so Lee Hunter from Texas Tech.
I mean, here's a guy whose draft stock has basically been shooting north since the beginning of the season. Was a good player at Central Florida, transferred to Texas Tech this year, was an outstanding player. And basically, he amplified everything he showed on tape the past year. And what I mean by that is he's 325 pounds, so he showed a lot of power. He showed the ability to bull rush blockers off the line of scrimmage. They do a 2-on-1 drill where it's two blockers and one defensive lineman. He was holding the point, but he also moves incredibly well. He showed the ability to twist and stunt, to move well laterally. So he's a big guy with power that can occupy blocks that also has movement skills and athleticism. So, a guy like that can fit in a multitude of systems. That versatility is going to help him. I had him as a third round pick. He's definitely a second round pick. Could he go late first round? I don't think it's out of the question because defensive tackle is a priority position. Here's a guy that has all the attributes, the physical attributes, and the intensity to play defensive tackle, to play nose tackle. And defensive tackle is a priority position. So, like cornerback, sometimes you get surprises with players at that position late in round one.
You got another defensive tackle you're high on.
Yeah, Darrell Jackson of Florida State. He was terrific all week at Shrine Bowl practice. He's more of your gap occupier, not a real playmaker, but a guy that, I mean, two guys were blocking him. They couldn't move him off the point. He would hold his ground. When it was one-on-one, he was barreling over people to get behind the line of scrimmage. Actually practiced 3 days in the Shrine Bowl. I believe he played in the Shrine Bowl game. I was in and out of that game because I was in Mobile when that game took place. Then showed up at the Senior Bowl and practiced 3 days at the Senior Bowl and went up against some of the better blockers at the Senior Bowl. And again, showed that he's got the power to hold the point. He can basically collapse the pocket. Was great in one-on-ones. Now, Darrell Jackson does have some off-the-field issues. And when I was at the Shrine Bowl, I mean, they basically told me outright, teams told me, he's got third-round talent, but the off-the-field issues could push him down.
How unusual is it nowadays, especially, to see guys, like you mentioned, showing up at both?
It's very unusual. I mean, back in the day, 20, 25 years ago, it was the norm. I mean, guys like Joey Harrington,
It was
David
the
Clark
circuit, yeah.
would play at both, first the Shrine Bowl and then the Senior Bowl. What happened was Joey Harrington, the year he was drafted, actually got hurt in the Shrine Bowl with a minor knee injury, and that kind of ended it. And then what happened is these players, like David Bailey, we'll talk about later on, they're convinced they're going to be very early picks. Why go to the Senior Bowl? Because it's going to do more harm than good. So it's very unusual, and guys like Darrell Jackson, who go to both, deserve to be applauded. I mean, because Like I said, I mean, 3 days of nonstop practice at the Shrine Bowl, plays the game Tuesday night, and he's there Wednesday for practice at the Senior Bowl. Good for him.
Also, talk to me just in terms of like what happens on site, Tony, when a guy like Tyren Montgomery or like you mentioned Derek Moore with Markel Bell, or a guy like Jackson barreling over people. What happens on site? Is it a matter of like these scouts like on their like looking down at their phones and all of a sudden looking up and then everybody starts scurrying towards the spot? Like, give me a sense of what happens when those moments happen on site.
Not really, because you know, I think this is a good point in time to talk about why the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl are so important. And the reason that these games are so important is because this will be the greatest number of eyes on these players at any point in time during the scouting process. You'll have maybe 100 people show up at a top pro day workout. You go to the combine, right? The combine, the last group that works out at the combine is the offensive lineman. Well, there's only offensive line coaches and maybe a few head coaches in Lucas Oil Stadium to watch the offensive linemen work out. When the defensive backs work out, you don't. It's all defensive back coaches and maybe a couple general managers or head coaches. But what happens at the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl is you have all the scouts, all the coaches, general managers that are there watching all the players. Now, to answer your point, no, what happens is the offensive and defensive line coaches get in the pit, as we like to call it, where the offensive lineman and defensive lineman are going one on one. Occasionally, you'll see a head coach in the pit, maybe a team that's looking for a lineman, or maybe a coach that's interested in one of the linemen. So you have your groups, so the offensive lineman and defensive line coaches are watching those players in the pit. You'll have your defensive back coaches, your receiver coaches up in the stands, watching the one-on-ones with the quarterbacks. You'll have your linebacker coaches. So no, I mean it's pretty. The coaches will watch their specific groups in the one-on-ones, in the drills, and then when you have full team go on, everybody's watching everybody else.
The other thing that is interesting for a fan watching at home who especially with the Senior Bowl, now we're getting to see the practices and
Yeah.
or some of the practices, not what you're seeing, not the full, but getting to see some of it. It's so fascinating that these one-on-ones mean more than the games themselves, really.
Right, because you're either going to see a player's strengths or he's going to get exposed. I mean, like Derek Moore. I go back to Derek Moore, what I said with Markel Bell. No one expects Derek Moore to put a 320-pound offensive tackle on his rear end. He did that. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in the game, but he did that in one-on-ones. You can also see more technical things in the one-on-ones. Is Derek Moore an interior defensive lineman playing with consistent knee bend? That was one of the problems with Darrell Jackson, who I mentioned. Gets a little bit tall in those one-on-ones, and you could see it. Is he playing with consistent knee bends? Is he using his hands well? I spoke with who was the receiver? Jacoby Lane from USC, another interview I did. And I asked him, I said, are they teaching you any new techniques about your hips? Because I noticed that he wasn't sinking his hips in and out of his routes. And he said, yes. In fact, he mentioned how Junior Taylor, the coach, just told him how he's got to sink his hips and finish his route. It's easier to see that in one-on-ones than it is in full scrimmage, because usually full scrimmage, most people are following the football rather than looking at individual players.
Couple more guys. I want to give you want to give some love to here. Don't want to forget him. Kyle Lewis, linebacker from Pittsburgh.
Wow. I mean, this guy, it was just wow every day. Kyle Lewis is 5'11 and a half, 224 pounds. As I said, at Essentially Sports, he came in. Where is he going to play on Sunday? Is he a small linebacker? Is he a big safety? And he was just terrific. He was a tackling machine at Pittsburgh. I know that some eyebrows were raised when he entered the draft, but he proved he belongs. I mean, he was great against the run. What he really showed up well at Senior Bowl was his ability in coverage when the ball's in the air, because he really didn't do a lot of that at Pittsburgh. And I mean, 5'11 and a half, 224 pounds. big guy plays big football. And I asked him that in my interview with him. I said, you're a smaller guy. You go up against big guys. Do you have a chip on your shoulder because these guys play big football? And he says, I play like a big man. He looked like he wanted to punch me in the face after I asked him that question. Uh, but yeah, but he
You're
was good.
probably taller than him, right? I mean, I was
I,
shocked by your height when we were in New York.
by about 3 inches.
Yeah.
Um, and Lewis was good every day. Every day he would just show something new, and he never took his foot off the gas. And I mean, there's a guy who coming into this Senior Bowl, you think, okay, fourth, fifth round. Yeah, he's scheme specific. He's not going to fit every scheme because of his size. He's more of a one gap defender. But wow, I mean, there's a guy that really helped himself, showed up, played, and impressed every single day. Kyle Lewis.
Just as a quick aside, did you play basketball in high school?
Early on, I was a track and field guy. I actually trained for the Olympic decathlon for 11 years.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's not on your resume.
And I was out every morning running in Dallas. when it was 10 degrees and windy, I got my rear end out there at 6 o'clock in the morning running. So
Dang. Dang. Yeah, when we met in New York, it's like, my son is going through the process on the basketball side, on the high school recruitment side. But he's 5'10", 5'11". So when I
uh,
see a guy like you, I'm like, man, I hope he played basketball, cuz it's like especially like 6'5" guys, and they tell me they don't play basketball. I just want to punch them in the gut, cuz it's like little short guys like me are like, we're dying for that, dying for those extra inches.
well, I'm even small for basketball these days, but that's another story.
Yeah, absolutely. So, uh, let's pivot here. Uh, let's go inside the scout's eye here, and talk a little bit about, we've got the bingo card for the head coach is just about filled out now.
Mm.
And one of the big moves from last week was uh, a guy, that a lot of us feel kind of got the shaft up in your neck of the woods with the Jets. Robert Saleh is back in the head coaching ranks with the Titans, and you got some thoughts just on how that's going to affect the Titans' fourth overall pick.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree about Saleh getting the shaft. I mean, basically his team collapsed on him one year, and then
Yeah.
when he had Aaron Rodgers, they were struggling to win games. The thing about Saleh is this: he's a very good defensive coordinator. He knows how to coach defenses. We'll see if he can be a head coach, because sometimes these guys, the second time around, are successful. But how does Robert Saleh being hired by Tennessee affect the fourth pick of the draft? I think it's going to have a significant impact. First thing you got to do is you got to look at that Mike Borgonzi, the general manager that came from Kansas City as the assistant to Brett Veach. He's going to be the guy that makes the pick. But I know for a fact, I'm sure for a fact, that Saleh is going to have a big input. And he's going to want David Bailey. He's going to want David Bailey with that fourth selection, the edge rusher from Texas Tech, because it's a system fit. It fits a need. He's an outstanding player. And just look at his history. I mean, he likes that type of player. When he was with the Jets, they drafted Jermaine Johnson. They traded back into the first round of the 2022 draft to get Jermaine Johnson. And then a year later, they shocked a lot of people by taking Will McDonald, another edge rusher, with, I believe it was the 14th or 15th pick of the draft, over Jackson Smith Njigba. A lot of
Yep.
people going to question that selection. But I think that David Bailey with the fourth pick, and I'll talk about the Jets and David Bailey in a second, is a natural fit. And I think that's what Robert Saleh is going to want, because it's a need. They drafted the kid from UCLA last year in the second round. He was injured a lot this year. It'll be a terrific it'll be a terrific pairing. Back when Trey Hendrickson was a free agent after he had finished his 4 years at New Orleans, the New York Jets were in competition with the Cincinnati Bengals to sign Trey Hendrickson. And the Jets really wanted Hendrickson, but Hendrickson said, you know what, Cincinnati's a better fit for me because they run a four-man front. I don't want to play standing over tackle, which is what Saleh's system does. And David Bailey is tremendous, from Texas Tech, is tremendous standing over tackle. That's why a lot of people, I disagree with a lot of people who think that the Jets could take David Bailey. with the second pick of the draft because Aaron Glenn's system is more four-man front, hand in the dirt, as opposed to standing over tackle. And when you watch David Bailey, the film on David Bailey, when he stands over tackle, he is spectacular. Spectacular rushing passer, defending the run, getting down the line of scrimmage and making plays in space. Not the same type of player out of a three-point stance, which is what Aaron Glenn is going to want. So I don't agree with these mock drafts that have David Bailey coming out of with the Jets at number 2 because I think it's not a good system fit. I think he's a great system fit for Saleh. I would be shocked if Bailey's available at the 4th pick to the Tennessee Titans and they pass him up. I would be shocked. And this is the second day of February.
And you know, I didn't agree with the mock drafts almost until you just said all this, Tony, because this seems like just the kind of idiotic move that the Jets would do where it doesn't fit the coach, but just to spite it, with all the talk about Saleh wanting him at 4, just to spite him, to make that move, just to kind of block.
I think the owner would be making that decision, but
That's what I'm saying, though.
I mean, Aaron Glenn is forget about spite. Aaron Glenn and the Jets need to get players at the top of the
Yeah.
second pick of the draft, middle of the first round, top of the second round, that can be on the field week 1 in the NFL and be productive.
This is a good time to tell you a little bit about. Well, we're talking about the draft order here, but a good time to talk a little bit about uh, the draft board
Yeah.
at EssentiallySports.com. Tony Pauline's big board. Uh, Listen, this is what Tony's talking about. This is where you're going to see all of the movement over the next few weeks. It's this is a living document, as we say, uh, constantly changing. I would imagine a lot of, as you said, a lot of movement, a lot of. It's got to be hard for you not to want to just like do the update today, right? But I mean, there's you can only do so many of these updates without driving yourself crazy and kind of not making sense in the middle of the process, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of time. You're right. I think the more interesting thing is looking at the heights and weights from the Senior Bowl compared to what they were at the beginning of the season. That's interesting. Hand size is also, especially with the quarterbacks, is also an issue. You start to get those official measurements. Never mind the play on the field. That also plays into the process. And one thing about about the big board, just keep an eye out because if not by the end of this week, by the middle of next week, there'll be about 120 scouting reports inserted on those players. So you'll start to really get into detail on what those players can do and what they can't do.
And the other part of this too is that Tony's got a 2-round mock out now on Essentially Sports, so we will start to attach some of the Tony's mock drafts to where they are on the big board. Start to put the projected teams and the players together on the big board as well. So a lot of things going on coming out of these two bowls. So check it out on EssentiallySports.com. All right. So one other key topic that we wanted to get to around just kind of the scout's eye is this idea of Ty Simpson. And
Yeah.
and Ty Simpson came out this week with some interesting comments around um, entering the draft and the transfer portal versus legacy.
I mean, he said he's content with his decision to stay to enter the draft because if he stayed in school and transferred to another college, it would have tarnished his legacy at Alabama, which I found interesting. I mean, what is his legacy at Alabama? Losing to a bad Florida State program the first game of the year, playing 2 good months of football, getting pounded by Georgia in the SEC title game, getting pounded in the second round of the playoffs by Indiana. I mean, I don't know what his legacy is. I mean, Quinn Ewers basically mentioned the same thing middle of the 2025 season. he entered the draft rather than transferring to another school to preserve his Longhorn legacy. But Quinn Ewers did a lot of winning at University of Texas. He brought that team to the semifinals of the college football playoffs, and there was a big name quarterback in the wings, Arch Manning, behind Quinn Ewers. And what happened? Well, Texas with Arch Manning really didn't do much better. Didn't do any better this year than with Quinn Ewers. So Quinn Ewers had a point. I just don't understand why Simpson would say that. You look at guys like Mac Jones. He has a legacy at Alabama. Only started 1 year, but he did win a national championship.
Yeah.
A. McCarron, who was a marginal NFL quarterback, again won a national championship at Alabama. What is Ty Simpson's legacy at Alabama that he wants to preserve? Maybe a handful, 6 or 7 really good games. That's not Alabama football.
It's like, McCarron, again, serviceable NFL backup, but I mean, McCarron's out. He had history there, but like his biggest viral moment had to do more with his girlfriend than. So it's, what it was with Simpson that I found interesting is it's almost hedging his bets that he's not gonna do well in the NFL. So like this is so at least he'll have that on his resume. He'll always be able to go back to Alabama as and be known as the Alabama quarterback.
Could very well be. I mean, you may be right on the money with that. That's other players who say it's an apples to oranges comparison, but enter the field, become agents, can't go back to their old school because they're looked at on as poison because they're agents. So I'm sure it's the same sort of situation for a quarterback from a program like Alabama that transfers out, and can't come back to Alabama. Aren't going to be too many Fernando Mendozas out there who transfer from a program like Cal, go to Indiana, win a national title, win a Heisman Trophy. I mean, Cal can't be upset with the results of that.
I was just gonna say that a guy like Mendoza is still gonna be loved at Cal and gonna be loved in Indiana, whereas it's almost like in this transfer portal age, like it's gonna be held against you if you go into the portal in terms of your legacy at the school. Beck. Beck's not gonna be known for Georgia. Not that he wants to be known for Georgia, but in terms of just like the alumni events and that whole road of staying relevant for the next 10, 15 years, it's going to be more Miami than Georgia.
And I'm sure Carson Beck hopes that we forget a lot about his Georgia days, especially compared to the way he played last season at Miami.
Absolutely. One more note in terms of just some things we're seeing uh, around the draft process this week. Jordan Tyson to the Giants. Cam Scatterbo coming out and talking about his ASU prodigy, so to speak. How much weight does this hold when a current guy comes out? How much weight does it hold any weight within the war room in terms of a guy saying he wants another guy?
Zero, none whatsoever. I mean, you remember not that long ago, Deshaun Watson wanted to have a say in who the next general manager of the Houston Texans was going to be. Never had it. Everything fell apart for Deshaun Watson. But you know, uh, general managers, coaches, when they're drawing up their draft board and they're making the decision and the clock is running down, the fact that Scatterbo wants Jordan Tyson, yeah, that's not going to move the needle at all, and you would expect that from players that were teammates. They may go to him and ask for some inside scoop, but they're not going to rely on it because they already know the guy is biased towards Jordan Tyson. It's a good conversation piece as we are talking about it, but it's going to have no bearing, no effect at all on whether or not the Giants take Jordan Tyson with the 5th pick of the draft.
Where, I mean, are the Giants even thinking offense there? Do you think?
I'm sure they're going to consider it, but you look at John Harbaugh, great coach, you know, it gets teams to play their maximum. But John Harbaugh, when he was at Baltimore with Eric DeCosta and Ozzie Newsome before that, big, strong offensive linemen, explosive pass rushers, fast linebackers, yet they busted at the receiver position. You go back and you look at the Baltimore Ravens drafts, especially in the first round of the 15, 20 years, or at least when Harbaugh was there. So was that about what, 17 years? I mean, lots of first round receivers that turned into nothing. So buyer beware.
All right, so let's go from the scout side to inside the scout's mind here with a couple topics. Um, Emmanuel McNeil Warren pulls out of the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. Interesting story, which I wrote about. I think it showed up on Sunday in my Essentially Sports, in my final news and notes piece. As I said, the Senior Bowl is a way for players that we've talked about already who really showed skills that scouts didn't know that they had and played beyond expectations. But a lot of guys also get exposed at the Senior Bowl. And the name Taylor Mays may ring a bell for some people. Taylor Mays was a terrific safety out of USC, had an Olympian type workout where he ran 4.3 something, 4.34 seconds in the 40. But Taylor Mays couldn't move to his left or his right, and he got really exposed at the Senior Bowl. And this player, who everyone thought was going to be a first round pick, fell into the late second round and really made his NFL career on special teams because he was a straight line player. What happens is Emmanuel McNeil Warren is a safety from Toledo. I like him. I don't love him. Some people have him selected in the going in the first round in their mock drafts. I don't see that happening. But an interesting thing happened. There were three Toledo had three players at the Shrine Bowl. And I was talking to some of the Toledo people, and we were talking about some of the players. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to see Emmanuel McNeil Warren next week at the Senior Bowl." And I was told outright he pulled out of the Senior Bowl because he's concerned about his speed and he thinks he's going to get exposed at the Senior Bowl. So I know a lot of people are going to say it's a bunch of hogwash. That came straight from the Toledo people. So again, you have to know your limitations. And I think with McNeil Warren, the concern or the limitations is I'm not really fast. I'm probably going to get beaten those one-on-ones. And rather than covering guys, I'm going to be chasing them down the field. And that bears watching through the combine process. Got a combine invite. Let's see if he runs the 40 at the combine. Let's see what his 40 time is. If he doesn't run the 40 at the combine, it could be another red flag for him.
So he'd rather you guys just see the Maction tape and where he's toasting everybody versus actually playing some Power Five, matched up against some Power Five guys.
I mean, he really wasn't. I mean, he was good. He had a lot of PBUs, very opportunistic. But as far as I'm concerned, straight line downhill safety. Again, we'll see what the testing numbers are at the combine and or at pro day.
This is another really interesting point. You bring up Garrett Nussmeier.
Yep.
Now, named the MVP of the game.
Yep.
Name the MVP of the game, but in your report, you have him listed as a loser. And
Right.
this is not a unique unique and very similar to what you had to say about Jaden Ott from Oklahoma. Had a decent
Right.
game,
Right.
but you've got him listed as on the negative side more because of what you saw in the practices, I guess.
Absolutely. Only because of what I saw at the practice. I mean,
Yeah.
Nussmeier. First thing is Nussmeier's hands are under 9 inches. And that is a big red flag for NFL teams. They want quarterbacks to have hands that are 9 inches wide. Last quarterback that was selected high that had small hands, Kenny Pickett. And it was a big topic that year when Kenny Pickett was at the Senior Bowl because all 3 days Kenny Pickett practiced, it rained there. So number one, I think it was 8 3/4 inches. So he's under 9 inches. And the thing with Nussmeier was when you watched him in practice, he was overthrowing the ball. He doesn't have a big arm. He had to put a lot of effort to get speed on passes, and he was usually high of the mark. He wasn't terrible. I mean, but where people are comparing him or thinking he's going to get drafted, and where scouts graded him coming into the season as the top senior quarterback in the nation. I think he failed to basically live up to those expectations. He's a nice quarterback. I mean, I see people talking about, after the game, he's QB2, he's going to be a second rounder. No, not at all. Not based off of the game. People have short memories. I mean, Pat White out of West Virginia in 2009. Pat White was terrible in practice, absolutely terrible. Had a great game. I believe he was MVP of the game. He was fantastic. Bill Parcells, who was with the Miami Dolphins at that point, selected him in the second round. He played 1 year in the NFL. I think Nussmeier is going to have a longer career than that. I think Nussmeier is a very good number 2 quarterback. But from what I saw in 3 days of practice, he's not a starter in the NFL. In my opinion, he's not worth a top 75 pick. I think he's a late third round, early fourth round choice.
Wanted to hit one guy, one more guy from your winners column, along these lines. Cole Payton, North Dakota State. You had him
Yeah,
listed as a winner at quarterback, and
right.
it's interesting to me because we're looking for quarterbacks, right? Like just fans are looking for quarterbacks to salivate over, and the minute you hear North Dakota State, it any sort of Dakota brings up like Josh Allen, sort of comparisons, or
Carson
not so good on the Carson Wentz side, but I mean, what
or
did you
Trey
see
Lance
out of
for that
Cole? What'd you say?
or Trey Lance for that matter.
Of course, yeah, of course. So Cole Payton, you said that his week there could propel him up the board.
Oh, absolutely. It absolutely did propel him. It's just a matter of how far did it propel him. I mean, Cole Payton was a 1 year starter at North Dakota State, played behind Cam Miller in 2024. So not a lot was known about Payton coming in other than he's a big guy, he's an athletic guy, and he's got a strong arm. He showed all those things at the Senior Bowl. Could make all the passes, could drive the ball downfield with speed, get the ball through the tight spot. When he had to run the ball, he looked very athletic. He looked like a more than competent running the ball as a quarterback position, and he showed accuracy as well as timing. Um, so I mean, he's got the physical skills, he's got the traits to build upon. He's continually gotten better, and then he goes to the Senior Bowl against some of the top senior talent in the nation, and he throws the ball well. Could he slide into the late part of day two? I absolutely believe he can. It's not a strong year at the quarterback position. He's got a great amount of upside. We'll just need more time, more experience, and proper coaching. He's got the physical skills, and I thought he met the challenge, exceeded expectations at the Senior Bowl, which is absolutely going to help his draft stock.
You talked a lot about this. We talked a lot about this when we were in New York, just on how guys. It would seem like a guy like this, especially it it's gonna matter him getting matched up with the right player development people, getting in the
Right.
right system, and to whether he's a 1 year guy or a 10 year backup guy that maybe gets a shot to start because of injuries sometimes.
That you can say it about any position, but I think it's, as you pointed out, it's most important and most evident at the quarterback position. I mean, there's got reasons why the Kyle Shanahans, the Andy Reeds, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Liam Cohens of the world can develop a quarterback, and franchises like the Jets and the Cleveland Browns are always searching for players at that position. So yeah, absolutely.
All right, Tony, let's hit the mailbag here. Huge thanks to everybody that's been hitting us up on the ES DraftCast newsletter. Y'all been taking advantage of the Ask Tony feature there on the DraftCast newsletter. We've been getting some great questions, and the mailbag is full this week. So let's get into it. First off, DopplerDan89 at gmail.com asks, will the Vikings draft a new quarterback or pick up someone else?
Yeah, I don't think they're ready to throw the towel in on JJ McCarthy yet. I mean, Justin Jefferson this morning went out publicly and said it was a mistake to get rid of Sam Darnold. as Darnold's getting ready for the Super Bowl. I think what they'll do is they'll look to sign a veteran. Could they draft a quarterback later on? I think it's a possibility. They're not going to throw they can't, there's too much at risk to throw the towel in on JJ McCarthy. If you read what I had written, I believe it was Thursday about the Vikings, what I was told is everyone thinks they're going to take a cornerback early, but I'm told Brian Flores wants to get more pass rushers in there. They're aged at the pass rusher position. So I write that article on Thursday about Brian Flores, excuse me, the defensive coordinator wanting more pass rushers. 2 days later, the Minnesota Vikings fire their general manager, and then if you read the news this morning, the Vikings gave Brian Flores an extension upwards of $6 million a year, making him one of the highest paid defensive coordinators in the league. Point being, kind of goes hand in hand with what I had written that Brian Flores is going to have a say in the draft. And for what I'm told, it's going to be pass rushers and tight ends later. Could they draft a quarterback later? I'm sure they could. I think they'd probably be more apt to looking free agency to bring in a veteran to help kind of guide JJ McCarthy moving forward.
Tony, let's talk a little bit about Flores for a second, because he's got the lawsuit with the NFL. Everybody sees him as head coach material once again. His
Okay.
days in Miami look a lot better in retrospect.
Yep.
And yet, you've got the Rooney rule. He keeps going through the process, but yet he doesn't seem to get uh the second chance that a lot of these other guys get. But he gets the like you said, the $6 million deal. Is it Does a guy like Flores say, okay, well, geez, I got 6 million. I don't have to put up with all the other headaches, and I get a say on picking the groceries, as Parcells would say. So maybe that's okay.
In the long term, no. He wants to be a head coach again. You got to be careful because
Yeah.
the lawsuit and everything that's going to turn people off. They're going to wonder if it's good for the organization. Flores is a terrific coach, and as you pointed out, his days at Miami, he did not want Tua. Did not want to select Tua. He did not want him as his quarterback, which kind of is what ended up him getting pushed out the door. I think he's got a lot of talent. Do I think he's going to be happy with being a defensive coordinator, making ungodly sums of money? No, I think he absolutely wants to be a head coach. And if the right situation presents itself, he will take the job. Now, I think making $6 million a year and being a great defensive coordinator, he will have some leverage in the sense that, Cliff Kingsbury, Cliff Kingsbury is still being paid a ton of money by the Arizona Cardinals. So Brian Flores will be able to pick the job that's right for him. And if there's no job like that out there, he can still live very comfortably as the defensive coordinator for the Vikings.
And we've talked a lot about this with the whole head coaching cycle this year. Like a lot of these spots this year weren't a great fit for a Flores.
Or a lot of other coaches. I mean,
Yeah.
look what happened with the Cardinals. Just hiring a guy that's been an okay offensive coordinator. So yeah, absolutely, it's more than just the depth chart. You got to make sure you're connected with the general manager. I mean, in the past, it used to be you hire the general manager, he'd be in charge of everything. The general manager would pick the coach. Now, you're basically picking the coach, and the general manager has to go get along with the head coach, or the head coach gets to pick the general manager. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. That's what happened with the Raiders with John Gruden. He brought Mike Mayock in. It turned into disaster.
All right, let's go back to the mailbag. Grant Gleason2 at gmail.com asks, what are the odds of the Cowboys trading down on the 20th pick or using it on a higher defensive prospect?
I think the Cowboys will probably go defense with both their picks in the first round. Do I think there's a chance they could trade down? Absolutely. I mean, depends on, did they get a cornerback with that first pick? Did they take a guy like Mansour Delane, or they go with a linebacker like Sonny Styles? If they take a cornerback, you have to see what linebackers are available at 20. If they take a linebacker like a Sonny Styles, are there any cornerbacks to their liking with the 20th pick. They don't have a second round pick this year because of the trade of Quinton Williams. I don't even know if they have a third round pick. They don't have a first round pick next year. You know, philosophically, you would say, yeah, it makes sense to trade back. But then again, sometimes Jerry Jones outsmarts himself and does things, to be put in the spotlight rather than making sound football decisions. I do think it's a possibility. I do think it's a good idea, depending on who they select with that first pick, number 12, and who is available to them later on in the first round.
A lot of even though it seems like a fait accompli with Fernando Mendoza and the Raiders, a lot of questions center around the Raiders this week. Rob Buck fan 1 at gmail.com, David Bowers 1959 at gmail.com, Nancy's Gross at gmail, Duga 1914 at gmail, all around the Raiders. Let's kind of roll it up into one here. Maybe a couple of these questions. Um, don't you think the Raiders would be better trading down and picking up picks? That's from Rob Buck 1.
No. I mean, there's only one real quarterback in this draft. It's Fernando Mendoza. I think people are going to try and pick apart his game as we move towards the draft. 16-0 last year, Heisman Trophy. He's got all the physical skills to start in the NFL. I think he's got the ability to be a franchise type quarterback. He just didn't. He didn't. Wasn't asked to do it at Indiana, but came up big. And I think part of the getting Clint Kubiak is the fact that we're going to take Fernando Mendoza with the first pick of the draft. Again, if you followed us at Essentially Sports when I was away, we were way ahead of the national media on the whole situation with Clint Kubiak and the Las Vegas Raiders and the Arizona Cardinals. And I said, it was the Raiders or bust for Kubiak. You could just turn that around and say, uh, it's Kubiak or bust for the Raiders, especially at this point, because as I said in the article, he has all the leverage. And I think part of that leverage is taking Fernando Mendoza, quarterback that's got great upside. He's got great potential. I mean, you're going to trade down. Yes, they need two, maybe three receivers. Yes, they need offensive linemen. They need help on defense. But if you can get the quarterback, that's the main piece. And then you bring in Kubiak. I think that solves some issues, or solves a lot of issues, I should say.
Yeah, I think the other interesting part, if those who read Tony's stuff from the Senior and the Shrine Bowl, it's not just about the prospects. It's a spot where you've got so many of the NFL guys on site that this is where you start to get
Yeah.
some confirmation on some things you've been hearing, or things come out of the woodwork. You you were out front with the Mike Evans rumor this week, in terms of him not coming back. That leads into another one of our questions. Um, Quivips at AOL.com asks, who will the Tampa Bay Bucks draft in the first round? Or if you can't be that specific, what position or positions should be their greatest needs?
I think it's going to be defensive front seven. I think right now, they'd like a terrific off ball linebacker. If they get a pass rusher, that's the way they'll go. I mean, we talked about Kyle Lewis earlier in the show from Pittsburgh. Kyle Lewis is a perfect fit for a Todd Bowles system. They're not going to take him in the first round. Would they use a second round pick on him? Would they hope that he's there in the third round? But I think at least early on in the first round, very likely to be defense, especially, since they hit a home run with Emeka Ibuka last year at wide receiver.
And is the Evans thing, is it simply a matter of they've got, like you said, they hit with Egbuka, they've got seemingly a lot of depth there where Evans becomes almost a luxury at this point?
No, I mean, that's not what I took out of it. It was more from the Evans side that, his career's winding down. He doesn't know how many seasons he's got left. He wants to win. He already won once with Tampa Bay, but he wants to win. So he's going, and I think the general feeling in Tampa Bay from the Tampa Bay people I talk with is, Tampa Bay is further away from winning than some of the teams I mentioned, coupled up Michael Evans with in that article. Primary problem is more defense than it is offense. But I don't think it's a situation where Tampa Bay is ready to cut the cord. I think it's a situation where Mike Evans wants to win, and he may have better options in free agency signing on with a team that's closer to winning than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Let's see here. Charlie Sabadaba at gmail.com. As a lifelong New York Jet fan, can you
Yep.
possibly shed some light on why the Jets seemingly every year make a catastrophic first round pick, and who, for your money, might pan out as their best choice with the number 2 pick?
Well, actually, if you look at the Jets' history going back the past 25 years, it's actually the second round. Yeah, they've made some really bad first round picks, but it's the second round that's been disastrous. Now, why is that? Well, go back to the article that was posted yesterday with Bart Scott, where Bart Scott said he wants to coach in the NFL and he would like to coach for the New York Jets as a linebackers coach. And I had a conversation with Bart Scott Saturday night, and we were in unison on a lot of our thinking. And what Bart Scott told me, and I put in the article, is there's not enough teachers in the NFL. And what he meant by that is, and we were basically uh, kindred spirits on this. Is too many times guys are drafted because they fit a system. This player fits this defensive system. Go back to what I just said about Kyle Lewis fitting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers system. So you draft a guy to fit a system rather than teaching him to play football. And if he doesn't fit the system, there's a miss right there. And then even if he does fit the system and the team doesn't pan out and the coaches are fired, then you got problems. Look at Mekhi Becton with the New York Jets. I mean, when Robert Saleh and his crew came in, they did not want Mekhi Becton, and his career went downhill. So it's not one single thing. The turnover in coaching with the Jets hurts because you have new coaches that bring in new systems, and then the former players are not their guys. Ahmad Gardner and Quinton Williams. Um, who were good players, but just didn't fit the Aaron Glenn system. It's a variety of things. For the longest time, the owner, I think, being involved with the Jets and being in the draft room, we see him on the phone. That doesn't help at all. Leave the football to the football people. It's not just one reason. There are a variety of reasons, which I hopefully just laid out.
And you talked about the Jets, paying 3 different coaching staffs at once because of all this madness.
Could happen. I mean, that's what we talked about. Obviously, Robert Sala's got a head coaching gig now, so they're off the hook on that. But they fired 9 assistant coaches this year, which means they're going to bring in. You're going to have 9 new assistant coaches for the 2026 season. And then if things don't pan out in 2026 with Aaron Glenn, and you fire them, you're going to hire a new head coach, and new coaching staff for 2027, which means that the Woody Johnson will be on the hook to pay in 2027 the 9 coaches that were fired after the 2025 season, the coaches that potentially could be fired after 2026, and the brand new coaching staff in 2027. So yeah, I mean it's a vicious circle.
The other thing with the Jets that
Cycle.
seems odd is just that I, I've never seen a, a a team have this many openings on their coaching staff this late in the cycle. Is that an
After,
accurate statement?
well, you're forgetting one important piece. After a first year head coach.
Yeah.
So this made after a first year head coach. So I mean, maybe they're not firing the wrong person, or maybe they should fire the head coach. Maybe that's the correct termination.
To get rid of that many coaches from a first year coaching staff, yeah, it's and to not have those positions filled yet, where it's
Yep.
almost like the musical chairs game is, they're going to be left without a chair in the game at this point.
Not the first time for the Jets. If you remember, when after they fired Todd Bowles, I mean, they wanted Matt Rule. They couldn't get him because they wanted to pick Matt Rule's staff, and then they kicked the tires on Mike McCarthy. And as the clock was ticking down, who'd they hire? Adam Gase, and we saw how that turned out. I mean, uh, Adam Gase, to his credit, has admitted that he basically ruined Sam Darnold's career with the New York Jets.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. One last question from the mailbag. Uh, An Angelino at gmail.com. Do you think the Giants will be looking for an outstanding wide receiver and some help in the secondary?
Yes to both. I just don't know it's going to be with that fifth pick. I mean, the Giants don't have a third round pick because of the Jackson Dart trade. Uh, I think that people saying Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson. I'm not sold on either of those guys being top 10 pick. Never mind going to the Giants at number 5 and go back to what I said about John Harbaugh and the history of receivers when he was with the Baltimore Ravens. I think second round, Chris Bell of Louisville. I recommend that people go back and read my story from the Senior Bowl. Chris Bell's the terrific receiver from Louisville who looked like a first round pick, had a torn knee ligament last regular season game of 2025. Is ahead of schedule. He's looking at a June return. Should be ready, if not by the beginning of camp, hopefully by the middle of camp. Again, with Jackson Dart, you're looking long term. So if you draft a guy like Chris Bell in the second round, a bigger, fast receiver who's shown consistent improvement, catches the ball very well. It may take a year or two, but that's fine. I mean, you got a brand new head coach there who's got time. You got a young quarterback there who's got time. Draft a guy like Chris Bell in the second round, who in time should be a real good receiver. Obviously, they're going to have to address the cornerback position, but this is not a very good cornerback class. We saw that. We knew that coming in. We saw it at the Shrine Bowl. We saw it at the Senior Bowl. So I'm sure they'll draft somebody, but I wouldn't be looking for the Giants to take a player at that position that's going to be a dynamite week one starter.
All right. Well, huge thank you to everybody for filling up the mailbag this week again. You can hit us up on the ES DraftCast newsletter. Check that out at EssentiallySports.com. You can sign up right from the homepage, and then the Ask Tony section right there on the newsletter each week will certainly get your questions in. All right, a couple of quick hit lists to end the show here, Tony. Um, Elite college players
Yeah.
whose talents didn't translate to the NFL. What kind of list does that look like for you?
Well, you got to go back. You look at the Heisman Trophy winners, guys like Troy Smith, the quarterback from Ohio State, won the Heisman Trophy. Jason White out of Oklahoma, Eric Crouch out of Nebraska, Danny Werfel out of Florida. I mean, these were terrific college quarterbacks that picked up huge numbers that, for whatever reason, their skills didn't translate to the NFL because they were system quarterbacks in college. Crouch was more of a running quarterback. Danny Werfel didn't have a big arm, but he was a timing passer at Florida. Troy Smith was a very athletic RPO quarterback before they used RPO quarterbacks. So guys like that, I mean, it happens all the time because the college game is geared towards players that will help their team win the game, not become great NFL players or become NFL prospects.
What about Crouch? What was it about Crouch that was it again just system quarterback and just did not find the right fit?
Yeah, he was an option quarterback in Nebraska. He wasn't a passing quarterback, so he was basically a running quarterback that dabbled in throwing the ball on occasion.
Any other guys that fit that bill for you?
Off the top of my head, I mean, I'm sure we could go through a long list. We could do a whole show on that, but uh, you just go back and you look at some of the guys that were the Heisman Trophy winners. Rashawn Salam never really panned out. The running back from Colorado, because that was a wide open option type system. Uh, you look at the Heisman.
Trent Richardson kind of sticks out for me.
But Richardson, I think Richardson was more of a bust. I mean, I don't think anybody expected Richardson to fail the way he did. I mean, he was what third, fourth, fifth pick of the draft that year, where the guys I just named were were later round picks.
Yeah, Achilles Smith, another guy that jumps out for me. I thought,
Well,
again, very early on in my evaluating days, but I thought, wow, that guy seems to have all the tools, and it just
he
did not
absolutely.
adapt.
Yeah, he had the tools. I don't know that he had it going on between the ears, but I mean, Achilles Smith was really at a time where the league started to overdraft quarterbacks because they needed players at the position, because teams needed player at the position. So even if you had a second or third round grade on the guy, take him early in the first round because he plays the quarterback position.
Is it possible for guys to hide the between the ear stuff with some good marketing in you know in the interview process? Can they hide that nowadays, or is it just it's not hideable?
Yeah, I don't think marketing has anything to do with it. I mean, could they pull off good interviews? Yes, but I think the larger problem is that coaches feel that, a guy like Achilles Smith, he's got all the physical tools to play at the to play quarterback on the NFL level. And football coaches do exactly that. They coach football, and they say, "Well, we'll teach this guy. We will coach this guy to be a real good quarterback." Go back to what I said. Go back to my article with Bart Scott, where he said there's not enough teachers in the league. And I think that's part of the problem is they think they're going to coach these guys to be good quarterbacks, but they can't. Justin Fields is the perfect example. The 2021 Senior Bowl, when I was out, when I was there, I wrote an article about how a team that's playing in the Super Bowl on Sunday, I'm not going to say which one, had told me that they went through Justin Fields' film, and all the years that he was a starter at Ohio State, he looked off the primary target just 7 times. And the article came out, people didn't want to believe it. And again, Justin Fields has been probably a better running quarterback than he's been a passing quarterback. I think the big problem is coaches get involved and they say, listen, I know this guy has had issues on the college field, but we're going to teach him we're going to coach him to be a good quarterback, a good cornerback on the NFL level. And a lot of times it doesn't happen.
All right, let's talk about to end the show here. Let's talk about college quarterbacks who were drafted too high but
Mhm.
never justified it.
Well, you mentioned one in Achilles Smith. We could go back and do an hour's worth. We go back to past 25 years, but 3 guys that really stand out to me would be Trey Lance, who we spoke about on another show as one of the all-time great draft busts. San Francisco 49ers moved up to the 3rd pick of the draft to select him. Uh, he started, 6 games in 3, 4 years. Anthony Richardson of Florida, who I never understood that pick. I mean, Anthony Richardson had great physical skills, but he wasn't even that good of a college quarterback. He was not that good at Florida. The Indianapolis Colts, take him early in the draft. He's never panned out. Daniel Jones almost had that team in the playoffs last year until Daniel Jones got hurt. You wonder what's going to happen with Anthony Richardson in the future. And then Kenny Pickett, guy I mentioned drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, small hands, average arm. I mean, he's been in the league what 4 or 5 years. He's been on 5, 6 teams. I think with Trey Lance and Anthony Richardson, it's a situation where the guys had great physical skills, but you couldn't coach him to be a quarterback in the NFL. Kenny Pickett was a guy that made some nice passes, had a great senior year, but it was a complete need pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers, which turned out to be a bust.
How did you feel about Tim Tebow?
I mean, I thought it was crazy to select him in the first round. I
Yeah.
remember Tebow had a great Senior Bowl. We talk about the Senior Bowl. If he didn't change minds at the Senior Bowl because he made so many good passes and he looked like a different quarterback, he looked like a passing quarterback, it at least gave you some pause to think that he could play quarterback on a consistent basis at the next level. Great athlete, great leader, did a lot for Florida. But again, I think I go back to that, what I said earlier. They see a guy like Tebow who's big, who can throw the ball, incredibly athletic, and they think they're going to coach him into being an starting NFL quarterback. Just never happened.
Absolutely. All right, so that's the. I mean, we got through a lot this week, my friend. That was a lot to catch up on. Uh, a lot going on. What's next for you?
Well, it's actually 32 degrees here in New York, so we've had a heat wave. I guess that's what next. Um, We'll be updating the big board. Now's a bit of a lull. The Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl's over. Next thing is the combine. Be talking to players. Like I said, the big board will be updated. We'll be dumping in a bunch of scouting reports, about 120 scouting reports. So that's something to look forward to. We'll have eventually a post Senior Bowl mock draft, and just got to get through the film. Almost finished with the Big Ten. Then I move on to the SEC. Then you go back and do the guys that I missed the first time around.
How much does the combine at this point? You had mentioned with the Shrine Bowl that there was a lot of talk at the Shrine Bowl about the weather impacting a lot of these training these training regimens, and how these guys are preparing for the combine. Did you hear a lot of that same sort of stuff at the Senior Bowl?
No, what I reported from the Shrine Bowl is the weather was preventing these guys from traveling
Right.
to some of these training facilities. Now there's training facilities. When I landed in Pensacola from the Shrine Bowl, it was freezing there. So some of these training facilities are in the southeast, but a lot of them are in Arizona. A lot of them are in California that have had good weather. So I've not heard that the cold in the eastern part of the country, at least, is affecting the training yet. I got to imagine that a lot of these training facilities have uh, indoor capacity where these guys can train. I know they do in New Jersey, as they should. I would assume that even Pensacola and Tampa, where some of these places are, they've got an indoor facility where these guys can work out.
12 degrees down in Tampa and Orlando this weekend. So it was hopefully the weather's coming back. Going to be 69 this weekend and partly sunny in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl. We hope you all enjoy that game. And we will be back next week to talk more draft, as there's no more live football after next week. So now it's all draft all the time, right in Tony's wheelhouse, coming up here as we wrap up this episode and look forward to the next episode of the ES Draftcast with Tony Pauline. Tony, have a great week.
You as well. Thank you.
You got it. Have a good week, everybody.